Hey, Amanda. You can hear me, right?
Hi.
Hey,
Hey, Kevin Kreider, what's up?
how's it going, Amanda?
I'm so happy you're here. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much for doing this with us. This is just awesome.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure. I'm glad I could make it work, even if it was a live stream.
You know, this is how, isn't this the currency of the world? The communication of now is live stream and on social media. So this is totally just beautiful to come together in any kind of way.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. I agree. So you
Yeah,
adopted.
so
Oh,
I am. I was adopted in 1982 and I was 5.5 months old. How about you?
you were a baby. I was almost 3, one day before I turned 3.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely a little bit older, but like I don't remember anything over there. It's just more. It's like a blackout.
Yeah. Were you living, you were with your biological parents or were you in a foster family?
No, I was actually in an orphanage, so I wasn't even with
Okay.
I was with my grandfather up until I was 2, and then for almost a full year, I was in an orphanage.
Wow. I
Um,
was in a foster family myself for 5 months and they tried to adopt me, but Korea wouldn't let them.
wow, wow. Of course,
Yeah.
a lot of restrictions there.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm like, it's so cathartic to be able to like dive in deeply with community right away, but I feel it's important for me to welcome everybody and say, hi, for those of you tuning in and joining us. This is Wishing to Grow Up Brightly with Theater Horizon, a company just outside of Philly in a town called Norristown that is producing a piece that I received a Pew Grant for called Wishing to Grow Up Brightly. And I'm here in community with Kevin Kreider of Bling Empire fame, but also as the co-founder of All's Asian Lead Love Stories, a production company that focuses on, um, you know, API bodies being central to the stories of humanity. I'm so touched that when adoptees are compelled to action, because I often feel like we have a lot of beautiful conversations, we have affinity groups, we have incredible organizations um, that bring us together for catharsis. But when you're an artist and the framework of your life is telling stories and you continuously do not see yourself in those stories, or you don't see a nuanced version of yourself in those stories, you start going, well, why am I the one who has to have all the empathy and jump into everybody else's reality? So I would just love to start it by, I'd love to get back into talking about our origin story because that is deep and beautiful. And I just want to thank you for the vulnerability with which you are able to speak so openly about your experience. And so, I would love to cover your production company and your intersection with mainstream media and Hollywood and being someone who has achieved success in a medium that is very known to people in our country. But, this is just a really open conversation. I just feel like a wave of happiness being able to talk to someone in community. But just to tell the folks, because this is taking place in Philadelphia, so you grew up in the Philadelphia area. Is
I
that
grew up.
right?
I say born and raised, but then obviously I wasn't born there. I was born in Korea. And I also wanted to touch base on what you were saying about storytellers and Korean adoptees being storytellers. I love that too because I think what we are now doing as Korean adoptees is not letting other people tell our stories for us. So, I mean, you'll see lots of other movies out there. I'm not going to name them, but they're about Korean adoptees, but it's not even written by a Korean adoptee or even played by a Korean adoptee or, not even advised, or the stories are just taken from us and literally turned into Hollywood pieces. And they, obviously we get upset, but I would say to the adopted community, people like you, Amanda, it's our time to tell those stories now. So I don't see it as like a wrong thing what Asian Hollywood does to our stories, but it's like it'd be nice if we had more of us to tell those stories for us. Because only we'll know the best.
Absolutely. Even you saying like, just consult us.
Just
I
control.
mean, it's that simple,
Yeah.
just doing that to add dimension. It's like, where's the Ryan Coogler of South Korean adoptees?
Right.
You know,
And not
someone
only
who,
to consult, but also give credit, right? Instead, they
yeah,
kind of just talk about it and watch a few YouTube videos, and all of a sudden they're experts in it. And I think that's where they get in trouble. That's where they get in trouble the most, because they don't have somebody actually going through this with them and going line by line, or being on set and helping out. So I think that's something that I could see Hollywood doing for Korean adopted or adopted stories in general. But yeah, I came up in Philadelphia, just like a lot of people that are watching, maybe yourself as well, right? And Philly is a definitely interesting city, because it
hmm
was growing up in the 80s and 90s. It was predominantly just a black and white city. I know there was Asians in Philadelphia, but the main races that were spoken about were black and white issues, right? When you're Asian, you're somewhere in between. So which one do you lean towards, right? And so for me, it was more towards the white side that I related to the most, because obviously my parents are white. In Philadelphia, anything beyond Market Street is kind of considered more impoverished. And then you could literally see every street was like, Walnuts was the rich white yuppies. And then you go down to South,
Rittenhouse.
right, Rittenhouse, and you go South Street, it's the Italians, right? And
Yeah,
so on
yeah.
and so forth. So I saw a lot of racial division, and it really was very daunting for us as growing up, because it's like, what side do you pick? Chinatown, obviously, but then I didn't really feel comfortable in Chinatown and relating to being in Chinatown as a Korean adoptee as well. It's only recently do we get Korean food in Philadelphia, I'd say. And I haven't been back for a while, but I hear there's bibimbap now, and I don't know if there's real Korean
Kim's
barbecue.
barbecue. Shout
Yeah,
out.
exactly.
Daebak. Yeah.
So it's changed a lot. And I think what's really helped is the media, us telling stories, whether Korean adopted or not, but like, plays about Koreans or Asian Americans in general. And, we had an interesting discussion about identity as Korean adoptees, right? Because I don't know about you, but it's like the Korean side is not something I relate to more than the American side. So where do you place, right? People who are immigrants or first generation, they usually identify more as like whatever origin they're from. So like, for instance, like, you know, um, Vietnamese coming over to America consider themselves Vietnamese American. But if I
hmm
were to be real, I'd switch it. I'd say I'm American Korean.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that. It's going back to what you were saying about walking around Philly. I grew up in upstate New York. I grew up just outside of Albany in a suburb. And when I lived in New York City, sometimes I would go to K-Town, and even though I would feel out of place, I just wanted to have that feeling of seeing myself even just on the streets. So
Yeah.
what you were saying about going around the neighborhoods and feeling, where am I? I don't see myself, is profound. And I completely agree. I grew up in a family, white European family. I grew up with three white brothers who are the biological children of my parents. And so, you know, it's kind of amazing how quickly you start surviving as a child, assimilating even within your own family.
Yeah.
That was a big thing that I was meditating on, especially as an artist, is we talk about this term code switching, right? There are so many different modes of code switching that exist in society, and I think it's taken on a negative connotation. But I started to think a lot about, like, well, but what if you are within a transracial family and it's not code switching, it's just assimilation, it's environment, it's your upbringing. I am something that comes up in the play is like, I'm obsessed with Hugh Grant and Brendan Fraser and Ben Folds and all these like white iconic men,
Yeah.
not out of a fetishization, but just merely because of the media I was taking in. Like my media diet, apart from In Living Color and Whitney Houston, was like SNL and white sitcoms. And so,
Also, too, white people
yeah,
code switch. I mean, you see
yeah,
people English playing Irishmen or
yep,
Italians playing. It's like they code switch, but it's accepted because that's just media, right? It's like I never once heard a complaint that Chris Hemsworth wasn't really from Asgard. Like, I never once heard a complaint. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
kind of interesting that we as Asian Americans can bring that up, because it's like, why do we just give that privilege to white people so much? Like, we should
yeah,
be able to. And I code switch because it's part of the media identity. Because they're so swayed to representation, identity, and authenticity that it actually ends up hurting Asian American talent, because they will only literally cast if you are ethnically truly that race. Daniel Day Kim even brought a
I
article
was
about
gonna say that. He articulated that beautifully.
it. Was so beautiful, because it's like, it's not even in context of a real thing. Like,
Yeah,
he literally placed somebody who wasn't Korean but just half on purpose to show you can still create a great TV show. And she fit the role. And I agree with that 100%. Like, the worst thing I hate to see for castings, and I don't know if you've ever done, is like, oh, we're looking for somebody who's authentically Korean. And
mm,
by the way, no acting is necessary. Well, no shit, no acting is necessary, because you're looking for something that doesn't really exist. Like, and by the way, like, I would say, is it the best TV and film possible? I'd say no, because you're not hiring trained people. And so, like, that's where I think um, audiences, and I'm not saying all audience, there's a few people in the audience that really want authenticity that way. But then I say, that's not entertainment for you. That's documentaries, that's social media, that's reality shows. Like, watch them. There's a place for you, to watch. So
yeah,
and you hear the opposite side. It's like, well, white people took Asian roles all the time. It's like, yeah, I don't agree with that. Like, that's totally a different subject, like, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, like, if there's a role that requires like an identity that is actually 100% Japanese, right? Because the person's real, it's a real autobiography turned into a scripted movie, and they need to speak Japanese. Yeah, sure. But I would even go a step further and say that if they don't even, if they speak Japanese really well, but they're Chinese, but they look Japanese a little bit, like, go for it. If they're the best actor, like, who cares?
yeah. Until there's parity for API artists to segregate us even further and hold us to a certain standard of authenticity feels really it feels like an easy thing for people to jump to in the name of sometimes I do think people, their intent, intent versus impact, there's a right, there's a self-righteousness of like, I'm being an ally, but at the same time they're not thinking about the larger entertainment system and the people watching these things. Sometimes the simple act of being exposed to a face that doesn't look like yours is profound. So and we know Korea and Japan have a really entangled history together. And so there's a lot of mixed race folks on both sides. So it's like, let's not start doing purity tests for each other about that.
Exactly.
I completely agree. You know, I, when you started your production company, um, yeah, what was going on for you? Like, had you just had enough, or you're like, I want to start a business, I have some heat, I'm ready to build? Like, what was behind that for you?
So what was really behind it was my fiance partner Devon and I. We were actors growing up back in New York 15 years ago, 16 years ago, and we realized that there wasn't going to be the roles that we ideally wanted to play available at all times, right? If not
Yeah.
me, right? So what better way to just create your own?
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from business, from starting a beverage company. I had a personal training business back in
Yeah.
Philadelphia for 5 years. Like, I did well. And it's like, okay, like, yeah, you can control a lot more if you can create it and hire the right people and do your own things while you wait for Hollywood to see you as somebody who can fulfill the roles. And also, too, I knew that being in reality TV, that there would be some challenges to cross back over to the acting world, because people don't know that it was like I started off in acting, then I jumped to
Mm,
reality TV because there was an opportunity, and I've always been pursuing acting, but then people just see me as a reality TV guy. And so I definitely like reality TV a lot. It's just that I have a passion for telling stories as well in a way that I can't just do it myself by being just myself. Like I like the acting part where you can be somebody else, and tell stories that don't exist. Um, and that's why we created the Alls Productions, to be able to do that, and to also hopefully create this incubator where we can get new talent, somebody who can come in and look at scripts or write scripts or AAPI or other talent, or work with talent that have been around for a while, and um, help the younger talent, and to co-produce with people that give the shots to the people that like we wish we had ourselves. And so that's what we've been actively doing, is trying our best to not only rise but also give people shots as well, and chances below. And I think that's what's missing in the entertainment industry as a whole. I can't just talk for AAPI, but like I think what's missing as a whole is like everybody's just looking for, let's just climb to the top, fuck everybody who's below us, right? But it's like, no, like you have to do both. Like you need to close that gap. And so that's what we hope to do with our production company.
I think that's so beautiful. It's taking command and saying, if I have to be our own heroes, then here we go. You are being direct, you're stating your needs and saying, I could either get caught up in the machinery, or I could take the knowledge that I have as a business owner, as an artist, and merge that together and create opportunity. I feel so aligned and so strongly about mentorship. There is a bounty. This is a bountiful world, and capitalism wants us to feel like it isn't. And I feel so deeply that when you feel your community, your peers, fellow artists saying, this is the need, this is what I want, and you have the privilege of education and access and the ability to articulate that, then it is incumbent upon you to make some waves. And, I think also Randall Park has a production company he started, I believe, as well. I'm seeing more and more API people just saying, great, I love where I've been. No diss on anything that's happened. But, I don't want to have to beg for someone to understand what makes my reality rich and juicy and exciting. And, I really enjoy Mindy Kaling's programming as well, and hearing her speak of her transformation, being an Indian woman in the industry. And I think very in community with us of like, oh, I related to whiteness, and I could hang with the guys. I had all the references, and that was a point of pride. But now reflecting, I don't want to speak for her. This is just what I heard at an interview, and I was really actually touched and moved to tears because she said, but then I was realizing something was missing, and that's it. And I think um you and I have had some crossover and experiences being among culturally Korean folks, people who grew up in Korea, people who emigrated from Korea. I obviously won't speak for your experience, but I had the honor of working on this piece, K-pop. It was a Broadway show. Unfortunately, it was short-lived, and it was really fun, just like fun to be around other Korean people. There were also mixed race Chinese Americans, Filipino Americans, Japanese Americans in the mix. And what was interesting to me was that I ended up feeling solidarity at times with some of the latter group of folks because we didn't speak Korean. And so I was very, there's that part of me as a theater maker that was like, hell yeah, bilingual room. Hell yeah, public privacy. Like, you get to have that. You speak two languages, you're doing this job, you're working in the commercial space, and you're unabashedly saying, I'm going to speak Korean. And I thought that was so beautiful, really, just as someone who appreciates multiculturalism. And there was no shortage of loneliness too, and feeling, oh wow, I guess no one was doing anything to me. It wasn't like anybody was actively trying to hurt me. That wasn't the point. The point was that it just caused me to turn inward and feel like, oh wow, I actually feel kind of isolated, and old wounds and things that I had suppressed started bubbling up to the surface, which is why I started writing Wishing to Grow Up Brightly during our tech process. I just had time. And I
Yeah.
said, well, instead of feeling sorry for myself in this moment, I would like to start writing about it because I always loved writing as it is. So I was like, I can either sit here and cry in my in my self-pity, or I can start bothering to examine the root cause of what I'm feeling. And I'd love to know, because I believe you've spoken about your experience of Bling Empire, just some of those feelings, if you feel whatever you feel comfortable sharing about anything that resonates for you in that area.
Yeah, I think one thing to acknowledge though is that Korean adoptees have a more increased chance of mental health issues than even Koreans or Korean
Mm,
Americans. So a lot of it comes from diaspora, just being out of the home country and being placed in a world where it's obvious that we stick out. So I think what ends up happening for a lot of Korean adoptees like myself is that it's so easy to point out the differences because right away we're
mm,
different. And I think that creates a lot of loneliness and isolation and wanting to things
mm,
change, and especially when you're younger, you don't have the tools or the wisdom to really know that making what makes you different is actually what's really great about you.
mm.
Like you can only hear parents say, well, you'll just understand and love it when you grow up more, right? Like, but you're a kid or you're a teenager. Of course, you don't want to wait for that. So I think I have a lot of empathy for Korean adoptees who still feel that way,
Yeah.
because I know it's just a phase, and if they can just get help and just know that they're not alone in this, there's a lot of hope that things will get better and they'll be able to use their gifts instead of using it to like hate themselves more, because I know that was my case for me as well. Um,
Mm,
yeah, I think creating the stories for yourself is very healing. And I think that's what's really beautiful about it. I think for me in my journey of creating stories, it's interesting because my first one was a documentary. And I can't say it was the most inspiring documentary. It was really just about my difficulties and the online dating and just talking about
mm,
masculinity and like how there's something really messed up about these online dating sites and the way they kind of portray Asians and don't really give the algorithm favor for anybody besides like the 1% of the guys that are on the dating apps, right?
yeah.
Who Asian. And so, by the way, I didn't know any of that when I was doing the documentary. But one thing I
Mm,
noticed though is like storytelling, right? It's the hero's journey. I think what was really not clear in that documentary was the what did I learn from it? Like, how was I
yeah.
going to be better and how was I going to overcome all of these challenges of Asian emasculation or being different in America? So I'm very grateful that I had that opportunity to learn, but I think we need to, as filmmakers and as creatives and as people in general, is to be more forgiving in the people in the beginning stages because they might not know the answer. They might not know their hero's journey yet. You might have just caught them in the very middle of it, like I did with my first documentary. And yeah, obviously, Bling Empire gave me the ability to tell my story and have like a nice, hopeful ending at the end of the season three. But it was like, yeah, but that all came from experience and learning and striving to learn more. And so, like, if people just saw me from my first piece of artwork, they'd be like, yo, this guy's like, I hope the best for him, you know?
Mm. Good luck. But that's, I think you hit on something so great, is that people who are people in society who are allowed to stumble in those early days of artistry.
You
I'm
have to.
constantly talking to mentees of all identities. It's like you have to forgive yourself. You have to be able to fail. Even now, you know, Ron Howard got to mess up.
Yeah,
Steven
yeah.
Spielberg got to mess up. Why can't we mess up? Well, like I've had friends say, what a great day when a person from a minority class gets to be mediocre. Like that's when true equity will be achieved. And so,
Yeah.
and to add on top of it, what we're subverting about model minority myth, which I don't even feel particularly aligned with. I was terrible at math. Playing piano, that was hard. I love playing piano because I love jamming, but like I have to work 4 times harder to get my hands to do it. Like it's not just something that's built in. When you're talking about assumptions about who we are that we're not aligned with in America, that's been a big thing for me too, being preloaded with model minority myth and then just constantly feeling like a failure because I'm not some like wunderkind Korean person, inhabiting a trope that people want me to be.
Yeah. No, I think that's another thing too. It's nobody can fail on social media or in public anymore. And
Yeah.
it creates a lot of pressure and unsustainable pressure. I mean, I've experienced it, right? You say one weird thing on social media,
Mm.
you have a bad day, and it's just like whatever. It's like, by the way, I'm not excusing bad days on social media. I'm just saying though,
No.
like, just no room for error, and that I think creates a lot of unrealistic expectations on people, whether it's in dating, work, relationships, where it's just like people get really judgmental very quickly, and then yet you hear it in the Bible. It's like, don't throw stones at glass houses. I think that's not in the Bible. I'm just saying, like, it's the whole thing. We all fuck
Yeah.
up. We all say stupid shit, or like we both are
Yeah.
uneducated on a topic, and yet we're talking about it and we learn, but everybody judges us by what's on social media in our learning stages. I think it's funny when people are canceling like artists for public opinions that people pressure them on. And it's like,
Hmm.
we're not in politics, but yet you're forcing us on the hand to speak just because we have a platform, but it's like, I think the audience and I've learned to do this now. It's like, hey, what was that person known for though?
Yeah.
Right? Were they known for speaking in politics to begin with? Then I will trust and I will advise this person to speak more about it. Oh, this person's just a reality TV star. Why am I going to ask him what the opinion is about like world hunger or whatever? It's just like, it's weird.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
you have to be allowed to just be human.
yeah.
And once you start being in the public eye, people think that you belong to them in a certain way. And it's so many people who want you to speak up for this or that cause or their cause. And I mean, I definitely haven't experienced it probably the way you have, but that's a lot of pressure
Well,
saying,
for
well, if
artists,
you,
absolutely
yeah,
too. Like, we're not built for that. Like, that's the thing too. It's like, I think a lot of audiences love the artist's work, but then when it comes to the opinions outside, it's better to not know your artist that well, because for every opinion, there's the opposite opinion that people just absolutely hate. Right? It's like, hey, I like the color red. Well, some people hate it. I'm giving you a
yeah,
light version of it, but I'm just saying though, like, it's set up for failure, and that's where I think artists also need a lot of grace because they're learning newly how to articulate bigger ideas that they weren't ever expecting to have to hold up, and
mm,
so room for even them to learn. So that's where I think like even learning about just and giving chances more to artists is a big thing, and but it can go for everybody too. Give everybody a lot more room to mess up or redeem themselves.
yeah, redemption. What an idea. Having empathy for people growing and learning. I happen to listen to a lot of political discourse. I am a big listener of Pod Save America and all those, the crooked media. And it's interesting to hear how the discourse has, grown about what people want is humanity, but something is not aligning on social media platforms where we're encouraging people to be human. And with this piece, something that was a North Star for me in thinking about it is I'm just telling my story. There are going to
Yeah.
be things that other adoptees may relate to and they may not relate to. And I'm here for it. I'm okay if there's debate. I'm okay if there's disagreement. I'm okay if people feel like, wow, you really repped the culture of Korean adoptees really well. And I'm okay with people who go, hey, I wish you had addressed this,
No.
because all I can do is speak from the reality of my perspective. You know, we were having a round table here in Norristown with this visual artist named Adi Herzl, and she also does a lot of advocacy around adoptees. And something that came up for me, and even feeling like I was allowed to talk about my story, was like, oh, well, I had a pretty good life in upstate New York. I definitely experienced racism, and I definitely experienced things that we feel. And but I was like, God, life was pretty good. I don't feel particularly a certain way about it. And I was just kind of muppeting along, and as I've unearthed the story and have it evolved, I am really realizing about the things that were suppressed and the ways in which as an adult, I'm looking back and going, damn, I wish I could have just given you a hug, told you you were beautiful and fine and smart.
Mhm.
But something Adi Herzl said to me, which was really interesting, was she said there are a lot of people, particularly in my generation, just owned in the 40s, of people solidarity and overlap in our community of folks who grew up in a relatively acceptable, dare I even say happy circumstance in their families, hit their little milestone markers, did what the society asked of us, and then woke up in our late 30s and 40s and started questioning what we've been suppressing in that effort to be acceptable and to be perceived as successful or moving forward. And that really released something in me because I have friends who have experienced a great deal of physical, is emotional, psychological harm by way of their experiences. And so I felt guilty that I was portraying this experience, but my hope is, and it feels aligned with what you are achieving with All's Productions, is just to start somewhere, just to put it somewhere so people bear witness to this. And if it brings up a debate, then hell yeah, it brings up a debate. But we have to start somewhere so we feel visible as members of society. Because even as I listen to political discourse, I'm like, so what are the stats about Asians? What are you saying about that? Because Asian immigrants and how they lean politically is very different from adoptee, people. So I find that element of being adopted interesting and crinkly, and I'm still working it out myself.
Yeah. Zero
Um,
question.
Oh no, just responding to what you're just that
Yeah.
idea of like making mistakes and feeling like welcome to
Yeah.
just start somewhere, and that's hard sometimes to take that leap. What's the community like in LA? Like, do you feel, what's the adoptee community like for you out there?
The adoptee community is not like the New York or the East Coast community. I find the
Mm,
East Coast is a lot more tighter. They're more willing to get together more often. Here in LA, it's very dispersed. It's not something that I think I went to like one, and it was like a small dinner. Um, and that was it. It was literally the only adoptee community I ran into, or I'll just know a Korean adoptee like who's in entertainment, and we'll chat once in a
mm,
while. We'll just follow each other's journey, but it's not close at all.
mm,
Because I think out here everybody's here for a sole focus, right? In the East Coast, it's people want to start lives. They're financing. They're in whatever. There's so many different fields in the East Coast, especially New York, that people go for. Whereas like here, everybody's here for entertainment, and
mm,
the whole city's built around it. So I think it's a little bit different experience that I had. Um, I'm not saying one's better than the other, but I do miss that tightness of the
mm.
East Coast adoptive community for sure. It's also harder to just get around in Los Angeles, so that doesn't make it easy. Um, but when you were speaking, I wanted to comment on something where it's like I know
Please.
there's adoptees with bad experiences.
Mm,
I know that it's not something I can actually even like relate to because I didn't have that from my family. I would say there's a place for it though. Like, for instance,
absolutely.
this placement that we have with bad experiences or like the striving to succeed, like that comes from a place of lack, like
Mm,
we wouldn't be driven. Like I actually do believe, and I've heard this from other really successful driven people, and it's like their drive comes from a sense of lack. Whether it's lack of like self-esteem or lack of like just time or like lack of like feeling like you're not good enough or inferiority complexes or um, everything comes from lack. Or else,
Yeah.
if so happy, you would literally just have a 9 to 5 job and just be a receptionist or something, probably,
Yeah.
just whatever. But I think the adoptee experience is so interesting because we can use our pain for something good, which a
Yeah.
lot of adoptees do. Creating art or going out in the world making a difference or starting an organization or a nonprofit or getting Korean adoptees together. Going to ICA, I heard like that's something huge. It's like it's great, and I think if more adoptees through the greatest pain could lean into that, I think it could even make our community even stronger.
Yeah, and to know that if we have certain, varying degrees of that, it's being an anchor and saying, lean on me, lean on me. I might not have had exactly what you've gone through, but I'm here for you. That's the thing that keeps coming up for me is that you and I, us, our community, we are each other's lost ancestry.
Yeah.
There's so much of an emphasis on lineage in Korean society. And, what does that mean for us? Like when I was pregnant with my daughter, she's 5 years old now. One day I just said, this is going to be my first blood relative in America. And my husband just stopped in his tracks.
Yeah.
And I know the power of family that doesn't derive from blood. I know that. But to say that out loud and say, oh, I have now ancestry in this country
Yeah.
it really got me.
Yeah.
Part of me, it's just like it always brings stuff up, right? And I think that is, yeah, there's nothing else to say. Nothing. I really loved what you said because that is valid. And if we can keep and be engaged in advocacy to encourage people not to create voyeuristic trauma situations, but to say, hey, like, you will feel a deeper sense of connectivity and hopefully comfort by being vulnerable and knowing that we will catch you. Your community will catch you.
Yeah, and I think sometimes like as an adoptee, we have this thing where we're too unique. Like there's nobody else
Mm,
experience or story.
that, that.
And that is our downfall. Like because
Mm,
when you start thinking like that, there's no way you can get help. And I learned that through just experience and recovery, right? It's just like I think
mm,
my story is so unique, or I think my problems are bigger than yours. But yet we share so much in common that it kind of like shuts us away from getting help from each other or leaning into the community because we feel like
mm.
we're worse than everybody else. And so that doesn't help. And I've played that before. That's how I know. And I think that's really important for people because it's like I could play the oppression Olympics all day long with other people.
Mm.
It's like, no, it's like, hurt and trauma is still drama and trauma and the adoption experience is still very similar in so many ways. So I think we can often too much look at the differences.
Yeah. And I also just want to say I really appreciate, looking at your Instagram, how open you are about your recovery journey. That has also touched my life in various ways through partners and family. And, that is just poignant. I just wanted to say that. And thank you for being so open because that you're intersecting with something else too, which is the trying to figure out ways to heal and then turning into things that pull you into a deeper dark hole that take you away from actually having the space and the land to care about yourself. um, Escapism has been a big theme in my life too.
Yeah.
Repression, um, I have an addictive personality and things that you can walk towards because the quiet of having to listen to yourself, like anything else, and I think that's universal, is alluring. um
We all have escapism. I think what the problem is when the escapism is the solution to everything, right? And I think it can even happen with work for me, where it's like I try to escape and get this validation through work so much, or like that empty hole of not belonging, like, which is a very common theme for adoptees, right? Like you can overextend yourself in that, and then once that
Mm,
becomes like not the solution, then what next, right? So I do think there is something about, we can learn a lot from, recovery programs, even though you might not be an addict, right, or an alcoholic, but it's like it's a lot to learn from it, because I think everybody slips into overextending themselves in these escapism routes, and then when it's not there and available, it's like we get like a little crazy. um, and so I think adoptees, especially, for myself especially, I have to be a lot more cautious on that, and to know, like, we're doing something good. It's like lean into the good things in life, like your play, or your music, or entertainment, or the adoptee space, because the community is really what's going to help you the most. That's what I've noticed.
yeah, absolutely. Because adoptees too, I have felt that pleaser in me. And the dichotomy of being like, I am a pretty confident person and I like myself. So why am I so willing to get down on my knees and say, please love me? And
Yeah.
there are subconscious things that are in us from being abandoned or given up like that. I can't stop thinking about what you were saying about knowing where you were living for the 2 first years of your life and then being in an orphanage. Do you go back to Korea at all, or have you had a desire to? Like, does it call you, or what's your relationship like in that realm?
No, I've been back to Korea plenty of times, actually.
Yeah,
I think 4 times in my life.
yeah.
Twice. Once I went to go try to find my birth parent. That's how I know a lot of information. Twice was for work. I will say it's a lot different being in Korea when you have a Netflix show than not, and it's a
Mm,
very different experience. It's like, you know, um, I felt a little bit more isolated the first few times, just because it's like,
mm,
a lot of people don't know the language back then. I think now they know English very well. But this is like 12 years ago, 13 years ago, um, before all K-pop movement and all that stuff. But I felt like definitely a lot more rejection and isolation, which is not the norm. I think, because I know a lot of adoptees go with adoptees, and that helps a lot. So I think that's a really important thing to do. I think going alone is a little bit harder.
mhm,
Any adoptees have never been to Korea yet, it's like go with somebody who else is adopted or Korean as well, which could really help you, find more beauty in the country. But I mean, I also look at it as a work thing for me too. It's like, I've experienced a lot of rejection from Korea for work. Opportunity.
okay.
It doesn't feel,
Interesting.
it makes me feel less Korean, so that is something I've grappled with, and still try to go through life with, just knowing that, and also to trying to see how I can kind of bridge it more than anything, instead of just being like, oh well, I'll never work with Koreans. It's like, well, how can I?
Mm,
How can we work together? Because you look at K-pop Demon Hunters, they found a way. So there is a way.
sure did. I mean, that is interesting you bring that up of, yeah, what do we belong to? Where do we belong? If Korea doesn't think we're Korean enough and America doesn't think we're an American enough, right? That's the crux of it always. It's like, okay, I guess I'll just go into outer space and create something there. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's interesting. I went to Korea when I was 16. Part of this is built into my play. And my uncle was a pilot for United at that time. He was my godfather and he fought in the Korean War, so he had guilt for that. And he sent me to Korea with my parents. And that's a story for another day. But I also felt that um, I felt scolded when I went there. Like, it was like, "Why don't you know this language? It's such an easy language to learn." And I was like, "I'm 16 and I live in America and I just want to be white. Like, why are you yelling at me? I don't speak Korean in Albany." That was my experience. And I've now learned, I mean, for better or worse, from that visual artist I was talking about these adoptee tours and about how people would go together. And you mentioned that now, and I'm like, I'm eager for that experience because we can just kind of be there and heal and whatever it brings up, you're in community with people who are not going to judge you for the range of emotions that are from pride and relief to anger and depression. It's like we have to be free to move through it because it's not going to settle in our bodies until we let it get through us like an exorcism.
So
Yeah. Um, is there anything else from your end that you're interested in sharing with the audience about your experience as a Korean adoptee, or anything that is pinging, or curiosities you have, or thoughts that you'd like to leave us
yeah,
with?
I mean, I think it's important for adoptees to show up for other adoptees, whether it's through their charities, nonprofits, or art pieces. And I've experienced great community and support that way. Which I just say that just to keep encouraging people because I think, like you said, we're not American enough, we're not Korean enough. So who will be? And I think these are the people we have to be then. And so, like the Koreans have their own people that will champion you. If you're Korean, the Chinese have their own, Filipinos do. I've experienced and seen it firsthand that they do. So I think the Korean adoptees, it's great that we do that, and we should do it more if we can. Buy the books, go to the theaters, go to the restaurants that are run by Korean adoptees. I know there was one in,
Mm.
but I forget the name of it actually. It's been so long, but
You said in
so
Philly?
there was a Korean adoptee who,
Pete
yeah,
Serpico?
yes, there you go, there you go.
Yes. Obsessed with him.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's just so show up and support people's restaurants or businesses to help other adoptees as well. I'm doing my end by speaking about the diaspora or the adoption experience and recovery as an adoptee as well. So I think that's where I do my part. But I would say that there's always more because as life gets bigger for us, the challenges will get bigger, and I think that's where we need to show up more instead of doing less. I know for me, like being in Asian American Hollywood, that's the same thing. It's like, oh, we're only looking for people like this, or like we segment each other so much.
Mm.
I think where adoptees are so interesting and entertainment is that we kind of blend it all in. And by the way, Asians hate that. Like Asians in Hollywood hate that we blend in so much.
Interesting.
Yeah, because they're
Oh,
so
say
white.
more.
You're so whitewashed. You're not really Asian. Blah blah blah. And I'm like, I kind of take a little bit of offense to that because I'm like, I'm obviously clearly Asian.
Yeah.
Um, Not just because I'm not as Asian as you. Like, who makes you the Asian police all of a sudden, right? Like to
Yeah.
say who is and who isn't. But I think that's where we get, an advantage. But right now I'm seeing it as an advantage, even though it's been a disadvantage at times. But like I am choosing to see it as an advantage because I see something they don't, obviously, and that's just where I think a lot of Asian Hollywood and creatives could use a little bit more. How do I say this? Open mindedness, because I think we're actually very open minded as Korean adoptees because we blended in both worlds for so long.
Yeah. The tent is big. Let us all in. There are plenty of people who want to slam that door in our face. It doesn't need to be other Asians.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And for a segmented reason or segregation that we do ourselves, like that's what I mean. It's like we segregate ourselves very well. And I just find that so interesting that we do that when we have the power to really, like you said, build that huge tent and let everybody in. Like we actually could. Asian Americans spend 1.3 trillion dollars in economic power every year, and it's growing. It's like, you kidding me? Like we have that power.
Mm. Well, it's interesting what you say about the segmented thing too. Before we go, is I find that because of fluency that we have, um, the fluency that we have culturally, and being able to be within the hustle rather successfully, it's hard to get off that train for a minute and go, oh, I need to make my focus advocacy for community, right? I think I will just own, I've been guilty of that at times. I see peers of mine where I'm like, hey, do you have time for this? And it's like, no, too busy doing this. And it's like, well, we can be busy as long as we want, but that's just also another form of escapism, as you said, that busyness of like, there's no time for this. Um, just before we wrap, I just want to thank you again. Like, I really, it's no small thing to understand the power of your platform and your advocacy and who you are in pop culture, but as a Korean adoptee and in recovery. And I just have so much gratitude for your willingness to take that beautiful spotlight and shine it on our musical. It really means a great deal. It's profound. And before we go, in addition to All's Productions, is there anything else that you want to plug that you want the people to know about so we can keep following you and supporting you, or organizations you would like us to donate to?
I mean, obviously, Theater Horizon and your playlist. Love for people to see that, and maybe you can make your way into LA sometime so I can see it, or I'll come by Philly sometime. But yeah, I mean, like, really just keep updated with me on All's Productions page and my own personal page, because I have a few things that I'm working on right now, like, that are very meaningful to me. Like, one is a book on Asian masculinity, especially through the Korean adopted experience. Like, I'm very much been working very hard on that book right now with the book publisher, and I'm pretty close to finished. And like, literally, I think this book would be very meaningful to us in our community, to hear a Korean adopted voice through Asian masculinity in that perspective. And I talk about recovery quite a bit in this book. So it's kind of like sprinkling in for hopefully another book about full recovery in the next one. But yeah, I mean, like, my acting career is very meaningful to me. So you'll see a lot of more things that come out on my pages. So,
Well, I'm sure that we have a new population of super fans, and I think that book sounds incredible. I already have like 5 friends that I'm like gonna go tell about it immediately. I know how much it's gonna resonate with them, and we'll keep that root system growing. And
yeah.
thank you for helping us, water this big, beautiful family tree that we're growing for our community. And for everybody out there, if you're in the Philly area or can get here, Wishing to Grow Brightly runs from November 6th. Today is our first preview through November 23rd. You can get tickets on theaterhorizon.org. And thank you again to Kevin Kreider. Please go follow him. He's an very important cultural voice at large, but especially for the Korean adoptee community. Thank you so, so much for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, and good luck.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.